It is a huge, extreme honor to be interviewing Don Bell today with Ivoclar. We are here live at Buffalo, New York. Actually, we're in Amherst, right?
Amherst, New York.
Amherst, New York, outside of Buffalo. And I want to start with this story. I want to call it the IDS story in the original days of Dental Town, because when we started Dental Town in 1988, dentists actually got mad when anybody from a dental company got on, and I called it Dental Town, and they literally thought it should be Dentist Town, and I'm like, why would you say that? And they go, well, they're selling something. And I'd say, well, what are you, doc? Are you a volunteer? Do you do free dentistry in the community? Last I heard, you were making a couple $100,000 a year and driving a nice car and all that. And it was just weird how Americans are so cynical, because if you make a profit, they think that you must be bad. And I said, no, because if you took away about 500 dental companies on the world, us dentists would be horrible. We wouldn't have 300 RPM night tie to do endo. We wouldn't have apex locators, digital x-rays, CAD CAM. We wouldn't have anything. And what's funny is when I go to IDS in the United States, when you go to a dental meeting, the dental manufacturer in these booths, and they're like not allowed to sell anything, because I'm like, you almost think it's like biblical, like Jesus and the money changers in the temple or something. And then you go listen to these dentists speak, and these dentists, they don't know a fraction. Like Ivoclar, how many PhD researchers do you have in Liechtenstein? What would you guess?
Probably 5 to 7, somewhere in that range. There's one here in our facility here in Amherst that works with us.
Yeah, so you have people who have a PhD, a doctorate in organic chemistry, and they work on these products for years and years and years, and no one wants to talk to them. They want to talk to some dentist, and we're talking about in America, who will be talking about a bonding agent, but if you took them to a whiteboard and said, well, draw the organic chemistry of the molecule you just said, you wouldn't have a clue.
Sure.
But when you go to Europe, IDS, they don't have dental lectures. They don't have them. It's an honor for the dentists in Europe. They attract like 140,000 dentists, and it's an honor for the dentist to go meet the founder of the company and talk to their PhDs, and it's just more trusting, open relationship, and I just love that, and I love the fact that you guys have always been extremely open with me for 25 years. I mean, I can't think of how many times I've flown down here in the last 28 years. You're very involved with Buffalo next door. I mean, it's kind of like everybody else, but I want to start with thanks for having me down here and interviewing me. Start with we're looking at the open house. Talk about the open house system that you do.
So the open house is a very interesting concept. About 5 to 7 years ago, we started bringing doctors back into our facility, and it gave them the idea. The idea was simple: come in and see what's behind the curtain. So you can learn about materials, you can ask questions of our PhD and our people that really have a ton of expertise on bond testing, and understand how to use the materials better. And what it's evolved into is a program where we talk about answering the why. So you as a dentist understand, if you understand more information about how the product is used and works, you're going to make better decisions when the prep is not perfect or the clinical indication is challenging, but if you understand the materials better, you're going to know how to use that more effectively instead of making up your own recipe. And the funny story that I always like to tell is one of the first doctors that came in here asked us to do all this bond testing, and he mixed and matched adhesives and primers and cements, and we said, why are you doing all this? And he goes, I run a study club in X state, and all of our group just mixes and matches whatever we want to and make our own chemistry set. And we showed for the first time, we actually did this live, how when you use a full system that was contained, like a full system of, say, an adhesive and a cement from the same manufacturer, and you started mixing and matching stuff, you would see bond strength drops as high as 50%. And most clinicians don't know that. They don't understand, well, what's the difference if I mix and match this adhesive with this bonding agent or cement. But when you do that, you see it drop sometimes. And it varies widely on the manufacturers, the chemistries. You guys don't know that. You might assume as a clinician, well, this should work with this. And it was fascinating because that was a very illuminating topic of, wow, this is a lot more than we thought. So it's evolved into understanding the whys of cementation, of adhesion, ceramics, of everything you can do with the materials to be successful. So that's what when the doctors come in, that's what they learn. They walk away learning, hopefully, and knowing more than they knew when they came in.
Harvard Business Review always says that when they study the most successful CEOs, the number one adjective that they always find is humility, humble. And when they find the worst performing CEOs, lacking humility is the biggest thing. And if I ask the American people, describe a dentist or a physician or a lawyer, humility wouldn't be in the top 100. You're gonna be arrogant, know-it-all, whatever. And it's funny because these dentists, when they buy a product and they see the instructions how to do it, they're so arrogant. They're like, I mean, they're not humble enough to think. There was 8 PhDs in organic chemistry that have been working for a company for 10 years, who did all this stuff, and they know all this knowledge you don't. And then they'll just sit there and say, instructions, I'm going to add this, I'm going to add that, I'm going to try this, because they're just arrogant. And humility is why people are successful, because it forces you to listen to your staff, listen to your patients, listen to your suppliers. I hear with labs all the time, lab people say that 80% of the impressions they get are just horrible. But they can't call the dentist because they're afraid the dentist say, "Oh, screw you, I'll get another lab." They're not humble enough to open to learning to say, "Yeah, help me be better." And I thought that was the most interesting thing for me with CAD CAM. If I look at all the CAD CAM attributes, I think the neatest one, as a clinical dentist, when I went to 2.5 loops, I saw a whole new world. Then now I'm at 3.8. But when I would scan those preps and you would see your prep,
sure,
25 to 40 times
changes
larger,
perspective.
Oh my God, you're like, am I the worst dentist in the world? Is there could Stevie Wonder do this better than me? And it just really changed your life. But I'm going to ask you a question, Don. So you've been in digital dentistry at Ivoclar for 15 years. And this month, last Thursday, 5,000 dentists just graduated from 56 dental schools. So I want you to walk them back memory lane. Tell these 5,000 kids, what was it like 15 years ago? How has digital dentistry been going? And then what's your prediction? Where do you think it'll be 15 years from now?
Okay, let's go back. So back in, when I first started here, I came from a non-dental background. I was at a industrial valve company. So I had no dental background at all. I walked into Ivoclar and I got involved with our first block for CAD CAM. Then Serona had the only machine on the market, and the fits of the restorations weren't great. The scanning was okay. Everything was okay, but not great. And what you started to see is the evolution of how it evolved to 3D, and then it got more precise and more accurate, and it got faster, and then more materials came to market, like Emax, to help utilize the machine better. And now you can do indications like bridges and abutments, and it's just evolved very rapidly. The last 5 years, it's grown dramatically from maybe what it was in a very high quality 3-dimensional image to something that's just amazing. When you scan today, if a dentist were to come out today and get a scanner in their hand, they can take a digital image, design a restoration probably with very little direction, which is amazing to see how far it's come from 2000. Where it goes forward, to me, it's very similar to a lot of other technology that's on the market. Things evolve pretty fast and very rapidly. And one of the things that we always want to stress is that things are going to evolve rapidly. You have to be comfortable with change. Software is going to change. We get updates on your iPad, on your app probably every week. Software is going to change in the CAD CAM machines to make it better, faster, smoother. So that's going to always be the case. But we talk about in our building the fascinating concept of doctors at some point will run their office without ever placing a direct restorative material again. They'll scan, design, and either mill or send to a lab for a final restoration, but what they make will probably be a milled or produced in-office resin, temporary ceramic restoration that'll be finished. And the days of a temporary out of a cartridge or a direct composite out of a syringe will eventually probably just go away. There'll be completely customized, fabricated restorations done in office. And that's, whether it's 10 years from now or what, that will probably be the case, where doctors will be doing that with the use of technology to get you a better fitting, better anatomy restoration that's monolithic, that's extremely strong and durable and aesthetic and custom for the patient.
I'm going to go down a whole different area. Implants. When I got out of school 20 years ago, we called it the golden revolution of dentistry, the golden era of dentistry, and it was just good times. And now I think we're calling it the titanium era, because as people live longer and longer and longer, their saliva decreases more and more, and when grandma gets into a nursing home, she has no saliva, and root surface decay pretty much wipes out almost half of her teeth in 18 months. And I see dentistry, now we're really double thinking. We're thinking, okay, these, if I build a barn in a field out of aluminum, I don't have to worry about termites. If I build it out of wood, I can brush and floss it 3 times a day, but eventually the termites are going to get it. So I think the aluminum barn implant and your crowns are a big future. I was wondering, do you think 15 years from now fillings will be more bioactive? I mean, I have people spray around my house every day for termites. Do you think someday white fillings will, if bugs start eating it or eating around it, they'll die, or bioactive or biostat? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we kind of see happening in the technology is that currently we take a block and it's milled down in a process of basically chipping away the ceramic to either make a crown or to make an abutment, custom abutment, or a bridge, or whatever the case may be is. I think fast forward a few years, it'll be an additive process where restorations are built and created out of layers and finished. And with that, there could be a bioactive component in that material, which will allow you to reject or push away bacteria and bugs. That's the easiest way to do it, because as you're building the restoration, you're going to be building a custom restoration for the patient, but also with an additive material to prevent decay or any other type of secondary carry. So I definitely see that happening down the road as well.
So you definitely see bioactive being, Me being 52, graduating in 87, when I got out of school, all the fillings, they were all silver. I mean, they were all. I mean, to get out of my school, University of Missouri Kansas City, we had to do 75 fillings. We didn't have to do 1 tooth-colored filling, and I don't think I did 1 tooth-colored filling. And so I got in 87. All fillings were silver, which was half mercury. That have silver, zinc, copper, and tin. And now half the dentists in America don't even have silver fillings. And when I think of that cosmetic revolution, in all honesty, I only associate that with probably only maybe 2 names: Ivoclar and maybe Bill Dickerson, who ran a Las Vegas Institute for Cosmetic Dentistry in Vegas. But you guys led that way. I mean, Bob Ganley and Ivoclar, I mean, they're the ones that were kind of out with the Healy molar and Tetric Ceram. And I mean, so do you really feel that Ivoclar kind of led that cosmetic revolution?
Yeah, when I got here in 2000, it was the aesthetic revolution, as Bob coined the phrase. It really put us on the map and took dentistry in a direction of, it doesn't have to be metal. It could be a tooth-colored restoration. It can look great, but it can be better dentistry. It can be a bonded restoration that's very strong, very durable, and last. And Empress then became Emax, which became a more durable restoration that was still
Explain that to these kids, how Empress became Emax.
So if you think about, I guess, things that you always learn about your own materials. We learn about materials every day, ours and competitors. Empress was a great material, and the limitations were in posterior restorations, especially where there's a lot more force. There was a need for a stronger, more durable material. And if you didn't get proper reduction and didn't bond it, it might fracture. And many ceramics that fell in that category were good strength, but not great. So what you started to see was some doctors would say, all right, I'm still placing a PFM in the posterior, or then zirconia came on the market because they wanted to have a stronger restoration in the posterior. Emax became an evolution of, we were trying to evolve Empress, and it evolved into ultimately what became Emax, to make a more durable restoration that could last and hold up in posterior restorations extremely well.
Would you call both, where did you have it here, the lithium disilicate?
There were completely different chemistries. Empress is a lucite crystal, and the idea with Empress as it existed, it was kind of tapped out as far as how strong we could make it. So it became an evolution to, let's make another material. Lithium disilicate was the chemistry that we chose, and what became Emax, and then that evolved into a monolithic restoration that had great aesthetics, which was very unique because for a while a layered PFM looked okay, a layered zirconia looked okay, but nothing had the great aesthetics and strength durability that Emax represented. So this became really a mix of strength, durability, but also it looks like a tooth and it has translucency like a tooth.
And and can you also explain, just for my curiosity,
Sure.
How come when we mill this out and we put it in the oven, it goes from purple to white?
So the idea behind this, we made the block in a way, and that's the difference between the chemistries of the ingot that gets pressed versus the block. In this case, when the blocks are manufactured, we need to make them in a way they can go into a mill and be efficiently milled. Because right now there's burrs that grind onto the ceramic and actually mill it into the final crown. So if the material was too strong, they would either wear the spindles or it would chew up the burrs. So this blue stage that we found was really this intermittent stage where it's soft enough to be milled, but it's still strong enough to stay intact when you're actually handling it, packaging it, and shipping it. So this was the step to get it from, I can mill it efficiently, get it out of the mill, and then we put it into the furnace for its final crystallization process. The ingots never have to go through that because they're heat pressed. So they never have to, they're already white. The ingots are already white. They go into the press machine, and they're actually, the restorations are pressed in their final tooth color. So this was the step to really allow milling to occur.
I want to go back to the cosmetic revolution of these kids, and I want to point out one thing. When you're 25 and you're walking out of dental school, I just want to give the historical perspective from my perspective, going back to '87, is that I believe that all people are the same, and if they don't feel good about something, they're not into it. And what I saw the biggest happening of the cosmetic revolution, whether it be two-color materials, bleaching, bonding veneers, the whole thing, is that when people started liking their teeth, they started taking care of them. They started brushing twice a day. They started, I always notice that if you bleach a girl's tooth, she'll come get her teeth cleaned every 6 months the rest of her life at the worst case scenario. She might start wanting to get them cleaned every 3 months. I mean, I have tons of them who come in after 3 months because they're starting to get stained, and So I would say with not Americans, all people, you either haven't been bowling in 20 years or you own your own bowl. There's no in between. You haven't gone skiing for 10 years or you own your own boat. And when I think the biggest thing of I associate Williams, Ivoclar, and Balm Galleries more with mental health than oral health. I think when you made everything tooth colored and pretty and jazzy and your Smile to the Max campaign, I think when people get into their teeth, then they're into them. If they're into them, they're going to brush every morning and night, floss before they go to bed, tongue scraper, mouthwash, get them clean. You know what I mean? They're just into it. And if you don't like your teeth and they're ugly fillings, you don't like your teeth, and you cover your smile in your mouth, you're not likely to want to go brush and floss and get your teeth cleaned. You're just, they just. So I think like I said, I associate Ivoclar more with mental health than oral health. I think mental health is more important than oral health.
I think to that point, looking at it from a positive aspect too, is when people become aware of things like the condition of their teeth, to your point, they take care of it better. They're more aware of it. They want them to look as nice as possible. It's the same with your health, your physical health. When you start, if you're not in great shape and you start working out or start taking care of yourself and eating better, you become more aware of it, and then you're more apt to have better habits. It's very similar kind of tie or link between health and awareness. And now I think if you go back to 1987 too, versus now, consumers are much more aware. They're more aware of what's possible. They're online, they're Googling, they see stars getting their teeth done or whatever the case may be and they can see and figure out what's possible with dentistry and what's possible that they can achieve. And they go to their dentist, I think, more with a plan of saying, I want to look like this because I know it's possible. It's not just a guess anymore. They're not just getting a tooth fixed that hurts. They may be looking at the bigger picture as I want to look a certain way, or I want my teeth to really pop and really look great. So I think there's an awareness element in this day and age of social media and information that allows people to see what's possible faster than ever before. And it inspires people to want more instead of just, my tooth hurts, fix it, and I don't care what it looks like. Now it's, my tooth hurts, I want it fixed, but I want it to be white, and I want all my teeth to look white.
Yeah, I think it was John Kennedy who said, a rising tide lifts all ships. And I think so many dentists are, it was Noble Biocare, the implant company, that got into the implant centers. What were those called?
Oh, I can't remember. Yeah, I remember that.
There's some implant centers, and all on 4. And they're doing all this advertising. And I thought it was funny because on Dentaltown, all the dentists were talking about the, should you do the all on 4, should you do 5, or blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I looked at that whole experience as what is I'm having patients coming in my office, seeing those commercials, and they're not going to the Noble Biocare, they're not going to the all on 4 centers. I mean, when those companies are marketing, they're raising the tide for everybody. I can't tell you how many questions that generated coming to my office. I remember one time when when I mailed out my first newsletter. I mailed it to all the every dentist I mailed it to every household in my zip code 85044. And this dentist came in the next day, and he says he told my receptionist, he goes, "This came to my house. You tell Dr. Farran I don't ever want to see this in my house again." And he dropped it and he left. And I thought, well, that's just crazy, because it was all an issue on dental sealants. And the happier dentists were telling me for the next 6 months, like, oh my God, I had 20 patients bringing in your newsletter on dental sealants. I had all these moms asking me that. He said, I sold more sealants from your newsletter. So I want to ask you about your B2C campaign. Smile to the Max, the website there. What are you trying to do B2C, and what's your goals there? And
ultimately, it's very similar in terms of wanting to make people aware of what's possible. And consumers, I think, from a standpoint of may see, I want to have a white smile. And I think part of it now is it's not only white, but it also is biocompatible. It's enamel friendly. It can be restored in some cases in a day if it's done in a CAD/CAM office. So Smile to the Max allows the consumers to see, with real live patients and doctors and laboratories working together, what can be achieved by the patient. So they can kind of see real life of what can be done, but also what the process is to understand it. I think sometimes you see cases where you think, and this 24-hour makeover show was a tough show in a lot of cases, because when you watch it, patients would say, probably, they come into your office and say, I want to do that in 24 hours. I want to have all my teeth redone. I want it to look like a star tooth makeover in one day. And in some cases, it's not possible. It might be, they might require ortho, they might need implants, they might need a bigger treatment plan. So part of Smile to the Max is what's possible, but it's also is what to expect from the patient and from your doctor. So it's not my expectations here, but it's going to take me multiple steps to get there, so they can understand a little bit better how to get to that point.
Yeah, and kudos to Bill Dorfman for probably the most influential on the television big box. And in Europe, lives in Portugal, Michael, is it Miguel Stanley? Miguel?
I believe so, yeah.
Miguel Stanley, who ran 6 seasons in Portugal, and every Portuguese dentist I talked to said that after Miguel Stanley did that series, I mean, all of Portugal went from amalgams and missing teeth to wanting whiter teeth and implants and tummy tucks and breast augmentations. I mean, it was just wow. I mean, it really has been a huge revolution. So most dentists, I know in Dental Town we have 2 forums. We have one for CAD/CAM. We have one for CEREC Sorona users, and then we have another one which used to be E4D, and now Plan Mecca, the big company from Helsinki, is a partner of that. So a dentist only uses one of those, but talk about what is it like working with two partners? And also I know I can't ask you this question, so I'm going to ask it because I know it's politically incorrect. But when a kid's coming out of dental school and they see 2 systems, they see Plan Mecca, they see Sorona. Does it really matter? Is CAD/CAM? I mean, is it Honda, Toyota, Acura? Can you talk any about that without getting yourself in too much hot water?
That's almost impossible, but let's start with...
I have 4 kids. I can't tell you which one's my favorite, because then the other 3 go, no, I'm just
the partners, from a partner perspective, we work very closely with Sorona on the CEREC side of their system, and with Plan Mecca now. And Plan Mecca's bought into the E4D company, and essentially is working on the design and the design of the production of what was the E4D system now into the PlanScan system. Both partners are very driven to providing a great experience for the dentist and for the end user. So it's how do we make it faster, more streamlined, easier to scan, make the process more consistent, things like that. So they've both been excellent to work with. As far as machines, I sit in between both, and it's fascinating because when you talk to owners of both systems, they love their machines, and sometimes I love my rep. I ended up buying the rep. I bought the technology because I bought into the rep and the specialist who helped me and got me to this point. Or I love the software interface, or I love the community that's been developed on the CEREC side, or there are just differences. That's where it's difficult. If you were to compare machines for a student, we always encourage people, look at both, but you will have decisions that sway you that we don't know about. We don't know about your relationship with a dealer, for instance, that I work with Patterson because they were my first dealer that I worked with out of school, or maybe Shine was, and that's who I started working with from day one, or maybe Shine was on campus with me in my university, so that's who I know, and I know my rep. Or I love the software interface, or I love some aspect of the technology. So both systems allow you to put a block in a mill and design a restoration, but how you get there is completely different. And probably the biggest difference right now is that Sirona, because they've been out longer, they are a little bit further ahead in some of the technology advancements as far as indications for use and some of the other things they're doing, but both are extremely good. So we would encourage for a student, use both, demo both, try both, see what you like, and there will be something that jumps out at you about either one that says, I want to go this direction. And some of those are not hard. It's not just the software, or it's not the mill, it's some other relationship issue or support issue or whatever the case may be is. So, who was your dealer as an example? You work with Patterson?
Now, my first dealer was in college, but that's a whole nother story. Had nothing to do with dentistry. I think what you said is amazing because, probably one of the largest dental holding companies in the world is Danaher.
Yeah.
And they acquired a low-cost implant Directs.
Mm-hmm.
And then they acquired the highest cost, Noble Biocare. And a lot of people think, well, that's weird. How could you own a high cost and low cost when they're both titanium implants? And I love Tarun Agarwal's answer, and it's mine too, is that he likes the rep at Noble Biocare, and that person's available. Like when I do an implant, my lady is 3 miles from my office. And if I call her, I have a question or whatever, I'm missing something, or she's right there.
Sure.
And as far as what dealer I use, I just switched dealers. I've been with one for decades and switched another one. Why did I switch? Do you know why?
No.
Because my rep switched.
There you go.
And I don't even care. In fact, she started to tell me why she switched, and it's like I listened out of respect. I didn't care. I see my supply deal with this lady, and my assistant Jan's with me 28 years, and we're a team, and we have each other in our iPhones, and so you're right. So and my best friend and dentist in my area, Tom Mattern, we went to Creighton together. I have the Sirona CEREC. I had the CEREC 1, then went to CEREC 2, went to CEREC 3. And Tommy went for the E4D because that's what his rep told me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very relationship. So I imagine if you're Tiger Woods, it doesn't matter what club you're swinging with. It's do you go out there and practice. And I think looking back to these kids on CAD/CAM is that I don't really care what type of piano you buy, but you're going to have to take piano lessons, and it's going to take you a long time to get good at it. You just can't buy an E4D or a Sirona and be good at it overnight. And if you're a businessman like I am, I do have an MBA. I decided when I got this thing, when I took the Impergum impressions and sent it to the lab, I didn't do any of the lab work. And when I bought the CEREC, I said, I'm not doing any lab work. I'm not going to buy a $150,000 machine to reduce myself to a lab tech. What I did is I bought a $150,000 machine and upgraded my dental assistant to a manufacturer. I created a manufacturing job. And that's what I did. If 120,000 dentists all bought a piece of technology and made their dental system manufactured, that'd create 125,000 manufacturing jobs. So I created for Christina and Jan and Yoni and Zach. They're now manufacturing people, and they do it all. So I go in there and I numb, and then I prep, and then I go to another room, do root canals, whatever, and they scan. And they design and they mill and they take it from here to here to here, and they try it on, they adjust it, and when it's just absolutely perfect, stained, glazed, everything. And I don't care how much time they are because I'm in another room pulling 4 wisdom teeth or doing a molar root canal or placing an implant. And when it's all done, I just come in there and cement. So I'm always confused when dentists always walk up to me and they ask me all these little laboratory deals. Really, dude, when you took an Impergum impression and sent it to the lab, do you know what stone they poured it up with? Did you use a mixing bowl? What? You didn't do any of those steps. So I think this has been I think this has slowed down a lot of dentists who aren't thinking about the business side of it. You know what I mean? The business side of it says, your lab man used to do all this work, and now you're doing all that work when your assistant's standing right there suctioning, and she doesn't want to stand there and suction her whole life. She wants to get in the field. She wants to get in there and roll her sleeves up and just do it. So what I think is another interesting thing about the CAD cam is it's made like Millie and her self-esteem, her confidence. I mean, as she 5 years of doing those, because I remember she was so proud, like when the girls and someone would come in and be like a front tooth, and the other three assistants were like, I don't that's tough. I think we should send it to a lab. And Millie's like, no, I'll do it. And then it turned into where the whole team's like, oh my God, Millie can crush that. I swear, don't worry. Millie's got it, and she's telling me the prep design. She's telling me, just give me 2 millimeters, blah, blah, and she's looking at it, and I'm all humble. I'm like, Millie, do you like this? Is this good? And then she would just take it away, and by the time she's seen that thing, the patient was high-fiving her. So it's been a fun journey. Where do you think CAD cam's going?
Well, first, let me comment on the workflow in your office, because that is probably the ideal scenario that when offices that first get in the CAD cam, they struggle with that setup. They implement it a lot of times and say, I don't want to change what I was doing. So they want to fit it into their existing schedule. I want to take the scan, I want to prep and mill and somehow seed it all in this very short window of time, instead of saying, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to turn it over to my staff who I've trained now to handle the material to get it to look like the final restoration, and then come back and seed it and have everything done in one appointment. So that workflow is probably the biggest paradigm shift that dentists are challenged with, is when they buy the technology, rethink how you schedule into something like that, and rethink your staff on who's doing what. Because once you do that, everything works. Your office sounds like it probably works extremely efficiently because you did that. If you try to do it all yourself, it would probably be a train wreck. So that concept of what you implemented is very good, and I think it's not a small aspect of why technology will stick ultimately, is because I'm expanding roles of other people to help do things in my practice to be very efficient. So that's a really big aspect of integration and how machines stick and how they're successful. As far as the future, I mentioned earlier, I think the big rush right now, and we see a lot of 3D printing. You see 3D printing everywhere probably. You can go on an airline flight and buy, in a magazine, $1,000 printer and print toys and everything else in 3D printing. I think the thought is, well, we're going to be 3D printing crowns tomorrow. It'll probably get to that point. That additive technology, whatever that's called, whether it's 3D printing or some other technology, will allow you to build custom crowns, which will be custom color. You may not need to stain and glaze.
Could they be gold? Because you couldn't make this out of gold and then mill it back, because you'd waste so much precious gold.
Right.
But if you did want a gold inlay, do you think CD? What do you call it? Additive printing?
We call it additive technology. So whatever that could, 3D printing, where you basically layer and it forms into that final product, whatever that is, car parts or dresses or whatever or toys, you can 3D print almost anything. That process would allow you to layer components and to be able to make a final restoration. I don't think that's a tomorrow thing, but I think what you get out of that is a custom built crown with color, shade, translucency that's formed in your office that fits perfectly and drops right onto the press.
Thinking 5 years, 10 years?
I think it just depends on what's the jump. Like right now, what we know is you can 3D layer resin-based materials. When we say resin, like a polymer material, but doing something like ceramic or maybe is more challenging. So the question will be, what's the material that best fits that process?
I want to say we have a podcast coming up with the original inventor of CAD CAM. Talking to him, when I was in dental school, they had the whole idea of this as CAD CAM. But really what the problem was, looking back 20 years, it was the power of the computers. I mean, the software. And so now, this iPhone has more power than the Apollo astronauts that went to the moon. Right. They did not have this much computer power. So I think now that we have much more robust computers, it won't take 25 years.
Probably not.
To figure out something. They might take a 25-year cycle and might get it down to 10 years or something.
I use this example a lot with 3D technology and I follow certain technology trends. I've seen fashion shows done with 3D printed dresses, or car parts completely assembled into a car that functionally runs off 3D printed parts. So the technology allows you to do a lot of things today that you could have never done 10 years ago because you can custom make parts and 3D print them and put them together, and the materials are durable enough to run.
I want to say that I'm friends with probably every household consultant that you can think of that's been out there the same length of time, and we all have these horror stories of people that in the old world they had they had 2 chairs of hygiene, and they were doing like 4 crowns a day. They would do them at 2 in the morning, and they'd schedule an hour and a half. They would numb, prep, and press for temporary, prep the tooth, take the impression, take the old impression, make it temporary, and they'd flip that chair in 90 minutes. And they would do 4 crowns a day for about $1,000 a piece. Then they bought Cerac, our CAD cam, and now it's a 3-hour appointment. So now they're doing 2 crowns a day because the doctor's in there and he's taking the whole thing through for 3 hours. And what they don't realize is that the bottom line is doing 4 crowns a day for $4,000 is always going to be a better decision than doing 2 crowns a day for $2,000. And in the $4,000 world, you had a lab bill. You would have been paying a lab man 158 units of the 300. There's $600 of that 4,000, and you got to pay that lab bill. That's got to be the assistant. That's going to be another operatory. And I also want to note that so many dentists tell me that they don't have room for another operatory. In 28 years, I've never been able to agree with a dentist ever. They'll say, well, I don't have room for an operatory, and their private office is big enough for an operatory. I'm like, why do you need this private office? Why do you have a bathroom and a shower and or the break room, whatever? But anyway, long story short, I've never walked into a dental office where some dentist said, well, I would do that, but I don't have an extra operatory. I can squeeze an extra operatory or 2 in anything. And what's interesting, if you go down to your dealers, Shine or Patterson or Benco or whatever, and you give them the dimensions of your dental office, here's a great project you should do. If your dental office is, say it's 20 by 20, or say it's 20 feet wide by 60 feet long, whatever the dimensions, go down to Patterson, Shine, Benco, Burkhardt, and give them the exact dimensions of your office and say, just give me the floor plans of every dental office you've ever made in these dimensions. And it's amazingly crazy. Like, you take a 2,000 square foot office, the variance will be between like 4 and 9 operatories. And it's like, how did 2 dentists get the exact same dimension,
Sure.
and one could fit 4 ops in there, and one fit 9? And then you're telling me, because I think the CAD cam and the E40 is very, very neat, but I think it should be an extra room. I think you should be able to stain and glaze it, and I think your assistant should do the whole darn thing. And I think if you just go in there and numb and talk to the patient, and while the Septicane's soaking in, bond and all that, then prep, then leave, and then go do all kinds of other things, and you come back and it's all done. I think that's critical. So I've had you for 38 minutes. I only get you for 20 minutes less. What else did you want to talk about?
I think one of the standpoints from our company as far as what we evolve material-wise is, I think it's a big aspect of technology, and I've seen this a lot in the recent history with development of technology like zirconia, and then even in the CAD/CAM world, where materials come out or doctors are placing restorations, and the comment is, well, it's good enough, it looks good enough, or it looks aesthetic, but it looks good enough aesthetic, it's not great. And I think that's one of the things. I heard a lecture recently where a dental technician talked about technology is not a race toward mediocrity. Just because you can put something in a machine and mill out a restoration, or send it to a lab and mill out a zirconia crown, it doesn't mean that restoration has to look good enough. And one of the great things about lab technicians, about what they can do, and we have 7 or 8 on staff here, they can make restorations look just amazing. And it's a talent, it's skill, there's some artistic ability to it. And it can be taught, and it can be explained and transitioned to other people in your staff or to other chairside offices. But the goal should be, make this restoration that goes in the mouth really nice. And I think the expectation sometimes is that, you can talk about how cynical we are in the US, in America in general, is that patients come in and maybe they're looking for, my tooth hurts, I need to have a crown. And you know what? That's a body part. You're replacing a body part. You should put something in, and you should want to put something in that looks really good and looks nice and natural, and is not just filling a hole anymore. And just because you bought a machine or bought technology, or you sent it to a lab that mills a restoration, it shouldn't just be good enough. It should look really nice, whether it's a first molar or essential. I mean, it should look really good. And I think for us as a company, the aesthetic revolution was a drive toward that, about striving to be more and raising the bar, so to speak, of what you can accomplish. Technology should be a race toward that as well. It's how do you get the efficiency of technology with the high-end aesthetics of what you can use to get from a lab in your practice, and not settling for less. Because I hear that a lot, and I think as more people get into technology, I think that's the downside risk of it. It's the race almost to the bottom of, yeah, it looks okay, I got it done fast, as opposed to, no, I made this look great, and I placed it and it looks really nice, and my patient absolutely loves it, and I love it that it went in and it looks like a phenomenal restoration. So I think for us, that's a huge aspect of what we do, and as we develop materials and shades and translucencies, it's going to be about what you see and what you can do in your practice with anteriors, or whether they're posterior restoration or anterior restorations with shades and translucencies that'll look amazing, that you can do in your office and have great respect or great outcomes for, and not settle for, yeah, it looks okay.
Well, I'm going to start asking you. My job as a moderator is to try to predict what thousands of dentists are listening individually. You know, the motto of Dental Town is, with Dental Town, no dentist, so ever practice solo again. So I always think of the questions as what is the most commonly asked on the message board. So I know the most commonly asked question that those listeners are wanting to ask you right now is, you know, they hear a lot of Emax, they hear a lot of zirconium. They hear zirconium stronger, maybe back, Emax prettier in the front. Talk to them, and to the young kids, the one thing I never thought I would see when I got out of school, PFMs were the rage.
Sure.
I never thought I'd see the death of the PFM. I mean, it's virtually almost died. I mean, there's labs just saying because of zirconium and Emax. So talk about the difference between zirconium and Emax. What clinical indications would you think are when you would do? Would you do Emax front and back? Would you talk about the difference between those two?
One of the things that's fascinating too, because we've seen that downward trend of PFMs go even faster. You know, the curve for a while I think was sort of slight, and then it became almost like a drop off, where PFMs are really dropping off fast because clinicians know they can go to zirconia or lithium disilicate and get a great restoration.
I mean, are PFMs down half in your lifetime, or more than a half?
The last data that we had looked at, and I might be off on the year, I want to say from 2005 to now. Back in 2005, it was about 3/4 of restorations were PFM.
75%.
And now it's almost, and the minimal, about 25, were all ceramic, what was categorized all ceramic. It's not quite to that extreme opposite, but it's very close now. So it's almost, say,
in 10 years it flipped
dramatically. And because the materials have evolved so much. So when you talk about now what's available, I can go with a tooth-colored restoration that I can get from my lab, or I can do chair side, and they both look great, or they both can look great. The difference between the materials, and what I find fascinating, is that Emax is a very unique application because it's got strength and durability, and zirconia in terms of raw strength is going to be a stronger material. But one of the interesting aspects that we've learned is a study that CR Clinical Research did a while back, now it's 3 years plus, where they put Emax into a bunch of offices and posterior crowns and full contour zirconia. And neither one of them broke in 3 years. And the point is that you can really do either one in indications and be very clinically successful. You can put Emax in the posterior and be clinically successful for a long period of time. So I think sometimes the misnomer is, well, stronger is always better. I don't know if that's necessarily even needed. If you get a decent prep and you are able to cement or bond an Emax crown in the posterior, it's going to hold up probably for decades.
Well, that's been my pet peeve with dentists. If I love dentists, I am a dentist, I'll always be a dentist. But the one thing that I'm always trying to tell my sovereign colleagues is that whenever they talk, they always sound like a bunch of civil engineers. They always talk about bond strength and wear and this and that. And I'm like, as a 28-year practicing dentist, this barn is going to come down from termites. It's not going to fall down. I mean, they always talk about wear rates of like Healy molar versus tetraceram, and they'll be having all these thoughts, and well, should I do Healy molar, should I do tetraceram? And then we talk about wear and all this. It's like, I'm pretty sure after 28 years that I've never seen either of those two materials fail because they wore down. Pretty much every single time, it's because they didn't floss their teeth, and they got a flossing cavity in between the teeth 6.5 years later. I'm pretty sure that we're not having failures from wear and bond strength. Like people talk about bond strengths of bonding on an Emax crown. I don't have crowns falling off. I have crowns that, this tooth needed a crown in the first place because you didn't brush and floss and take care of your teeth and didn't get your teeth clean. And just because I fixed it all up and put a beautiful crown on there, I didn't change your cousin Eddie. He's still your cousin Eddie. He don't brush, he don't floss, he doesn't use a ton of scrape, he doesn't use Mr. Rain, and he smokes a pack a day, and he thinks orange juice is called Budweiser. And so we're not changing their behavior.
Sure.
So yeah, I think I think the if a tooth colored and a charismatic dental office can motivate you to get into your teeth, and you start brushing more and flossing more, and that's why when hygienists and dentists talk down to patients or scold them or make them feel bad, I go back to my 4 boys and myself in sports. I mean, the only reason you stuck with a certain sports because you fell in love with that coach. Some coaches made you feel bad and ran off half the team, and other coaches made you just want to be all that you could be for your coach, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if a dental office can have that charisma, and when I walk into an office, every consultant agrees with me that when you walk into that office, they either have it or they don't, and you can sense it in like 1 second. You just either walk in and the place is just charged, and everybody's just into it, and come on, and everybody's into brushing, and everybody wants to do better oral health. Whether it be tooth colored, brushing, flossing, recare. Come on, Don, you got a schedule for your next cleaning. Last time you it was 2 years, so come on, let's get you scheduled today. Let's get on your iPhone. You either feel that or you don't. And so I don't get into the civil engineering stuff, but you think Emax is strong enough? I mean, Gordon thinks it's strong enough.
Yeah, it's interesting data because
Around
when we saw that, most of the premise that they went into the study with is most materials, especially ceramics, will fail in that 1 to 3 year range. So that seems to be the data that they ran was very typical that's when the failure is going to occur. Once you're beyond that point, it's going to last as long as any other type of restoration or longer. So to get it to that point in 3 years where they're both comparable was a great indication of saying, you know what, yeah, zirconia might be stronger, but it doesn't mean that Emax won't last in the posterior just as long or longer because the physical properties are very good. I think Emax offers a very unique blend of balance. And one of the things about zirconia that I think is true, but it also gets back to the clinician of what is their objective or what is their focus as far as a successful restoration. And if it's, I put in a crown and it never breaks, then you would put in zirconia because the crown will never break. I mean, bottom line, because it's probably the strongest material available. Or I would put in a gold restoration. Or put in something else. So you're going to put in something that will never break. Now, is it overkill? Possibly. Could I do it and use lithium disilicate instead? Will it look a little bit nicer? Could I do it in a chairside machine? Maybe. But it goes back to the clinician placing the restoration a little bit and what is their desire for their patient as well. So I think that's the difference sometimes is, and as manufacturers, I will say, we're as guilty as anybody of proliferating looking at microns and seconds and how strong and megapascals, because that's what we talk about a lot. And we don't always talk about the restoration looks good and it looked good for 1, 3, 5, 7 years, regardless of the strength properties or anything else. It was about that it was a good material that will last. We talk about specifics like megapascals and
let's switch gears because I only got you 10 minutes left. You were, Starbucks was a surprise business model for me because when I grew up in Kansas, coffee was free. Any gas station had a pot of coffee and a 10-cent styrofoam cup. And coffee, I always thought coffee was just free. You can go to any gas station, any Circle K, everybody had free coffee. And then Starbucks came out and said, you know what, coffee is free, but I think people will pay $5 for just a super duper fancy mocha deal. And you kind of did that with denture teeth. Denture teeth were just kind of plain Jane, and no one ever thought about a denture tooth other than just a denture teeth. But it was about 10 years ago. You guys, what was it, Blue Line, and now you have Finnair. So talk about what made you guys go into a high-end aesthetic denture teeth. Because when one of the failures of cosmetic dentistry is the message got taken by people who thought cosmetic dentistry was 10 veneers on a hot looking runway model. And when I think of the majority of smile makeovers, 31 million Americans have no teeth. And for every one lady who got 10 veneers, who looks rocking hot, wearing a gunny sack, there were 100 grandmas who got a smile makeover with dentures. And I still have people all the time. And dentures are still huge because America is a huge immigration country. We get 1 million immigrants a year. And I'm down there in Phoenix, and dentures are still huge because you have people moving in. I just did 3 on people from Bosnia-Herzegovina. And so a lot of people, their smile makeover is a denture. You know, everything was trashed and gone. And so talk about your high-end denture teeth and why do you have 2 of them?
I think the extension, it kind of makes sense when you talk about the aesthetic revolution with Bob Ganley's initial premise of where we are as a company and what we're trying to accomplish. The dentures became a natural extension of that. It was, we offer X, which was a good system that had a good fit to it and they look nice, and then evolved into why not give patients options to have more aesthetics, just like you would do if you're going to do a smile makeover. Why should you not have the same options if you're going to go into dentures? So it became a tiered process of having, you know, more anatomy, better aesthetics, bleach shades, which we do offer in all of our denture teeth as well, to offer you the benefit of saying, you know what, just because you're going to get a denture, it doesn't mean it just has to be a one size fit all. It could be a custom fit, beautiful fit, high-end aesthetics, you know, pink tissue and beautiful teeth that look like a natural smile. So I think for us it was really just an extension of what started on the restorative side, from direct composites to ceramics, and now is extended into our denture line. And it allows you to give you that kind of transition to, again, I go back to the settling part. You don't have to settle for it's a good enough denture. It can be a great looking, highly aesthetic denture and have a great fit and high-end aesthetics to go with it.
And you know, a lot of people, the people crushing dentures, they're the first ones to say, we have a $500 unit, and we have a $750 unit, and we have a $1,000 unit. And so what would you call your lower cost or lower end and higher end?
Yeah, I mean, we tier it a little bit based on, you know, the basic parameters of your tooth options, your shades, as well as your contouring effects of the teeth. So you get different molds.
What would be the low, medium, high end brand names?
I would say Blue Line
would be the high end.
Would be our low line, and then Finaris would be our upper line limit.
Our upper line limit. And I also want to tell you that the hugest return on investment I've been seeing is dentists will go get implant training, and then they'll go down in the poor part of town and go buy the denture world, where for 30 years some old man was in there doing dentures for, you know, and they had the 300 a unit, 600 a unit, 1,000 a unit, and they were doing about $500,000 to $1 million a year. But they learned how to place implants, and then they went and bought this thing for $500,000, and then offered 2 implants with locators, or 4 implants with a bar and hater, and those offices went from doing $500,000 a year to $3 million a year. So they bought a $500,000 business, but since they could upsell, they had implant training, and they walked in there with a CBCT, a 3D X-ray machine. Yep. And making surgical guides, which almost gets you to where Stevie Wonder could place an implant. I mean, if you got a surgical guide,
it's predictable. It's consistent and it's predictable. And that's the goal. I mean, I've talked to doctors that still do surgery unguided, and now the more that they learn and watch the process, realize, yeah, I can do it. I'm probably okay, but I can see everything. I can see on cone beam where everything should be, where I place the implant, and it's consistently predictable all the time, and I have less risk associated with it. So back to that point, that's where the technology becomes a huge advantage, because a bigger case like that where you're placing implants now it's predictable. I know where I put it, it's going to stick, and it's going to last with a high degree of predictability, and the patient's going to have a great result. And that's how the technology has really evolved in all these areas where you can do all these types of restorative cases with, you know, whether it's restorative materials or with dentures, to service the patient and give them options to look as good as they possibly can at any age they step into the process. That's what's really cool about it, because we've done cases in our campaigns showing older patients that have had dentures done, and I've seen cases shot and ads run where if you look at it fast, you would have not known if that was a denture ad or an Emax ad. because the teeth look that good. And that's where I think it becomes dramatic, because again, you're not settling for a generic denture. You're getting really good, and it can look really good, and it should look really good.
It's funny how times change. I'm only going to say this because 2 of my 3 uncles have passed on, and the other one I'm pretty sure doesn't ever listen to my podcast. He's 75. But do you realize that all 3 of my uncles in Parsons, Kansas, all were into full dentures before they graduated from high school?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, have times changed or what?
Yeah.
You know, in World War II, the number 1 reason to reject a soldier for infantry to World War II was he didn't have 7 teeth. You had to have 7 teeth to go into the Army, Navy, or the Air Force, or the Marines. And that was the number 1. A lot of people talk about flat foot. Flat foot was high on the list, but number 1 was teeth. And I didn't have a single uncle that got out of high school with a tooth in his head. And so back to this visit. I only got you 4 minutes, but I'm telling you, if you can get a CBCT and you can learn implantology, it's more important than root canals, because when you do a root canal on your cousin Eddie, you're not going to change his behavior. He's still got a Mountain Dew in his hand, and that root canal you did is going to be mush in 7 years, because he's never going to learn how to brush or floss. Same thing. Did you see that study on bypasses on identical twins? They found 40 sets of identical twins where the one guy was lucky because he had insurance, so when he went and got the $100,000 coronary artery bypass graft, CBG, where they take the graft out of your coronary artery bypass graft out of your leg vein and put it in your heart. The other twin didn't have the insurance, but decided to quit smoking, lose weight, start exercising, and taking care of himself. The identical twin who did not get the surgery lived 3 years and 7 months longer. Because just because you do a bypass, he still has a pack of Marlboro in it.
Yeah.
He's still going to go out you see him in the hospital. They go out there and right out the front door, and they're smoking right by the ashtray. So we saw this with gum disease forever. I mean, you would do 4 quad-inch replanting curettage, you do 4 quad-inch of surgery, and then they go home and never change their behavior. And about 3 years later, back to square one. So so what else? So I'm going to end. I only got you for 3 more minutes. What is Ivoclar doing with implants? The titanium implant revolution.
So right now, I'll say right now, because I think it could change. You never know where we're going to be. Right now, we're restoring implants. So we work with our partners. Implants are placed. We work on, in the case with Farran and their system, a restorative system and a chairside application with a Farran tie base that we put a custom abutment on and cement it, and then restore that with a crown. So right now, it's the top half from the implant up. And we see the same thing. Implants are becoming more the norm. They're extremely predictable now, more so than ever before. They offer great solutions. They're less invasive than a bridge in a lot of cases, because you're not grinding down other teeth. And it gives you a great solution. So right now we're from the tissue level up is what we're really focused on. And we're focused on technology like this, where you're actually able to take a block and mill your own custom abutment, attach it to a Farran titanium base that'll fit into virtually any implant that's on the market today. And you can do that in your office, or you can have the implant placed and then do the restorative part in your office. So it gives you the ability to finish the implant and then drop the final crown on and get a beautiful looking restoration.
But some people are taking this white stuff and making white porcelain implants, and you're the leader in white stuff, porcelain, all that stuff. Do you think Ivoclar will ever make an Emax implant?
I think we've looked at it. I know we've looked at it to some extent. I think one of the challenges that we've all realized is that the one downside about implant going into the bone right now, and that's why titanium is so good, is that when you start placing ceramic, it's great until it breaks. When something goes awry and it splinters or comes apart, zirconia is really bad for that. Anything glass, then you're trying to retrieve glass out of bone, which is never an ideal situation. So right now, I think until that gets perfected or smoothed out or improved in some way, the risk of that failure occurring, and it could be because of an accident. The patient gets hit, shears off the implant, but now it's sheared. You've got glass, basically.
So what you're saying is that the idea of it going in, that's easy, nice,
and it looks nice. You're right, and it will look nice.
But if it broke, then that's...
And that will happen, unfortunately. It could be a variety of things. Could be patient not taking care of the bone gets weak, and then for whatever reason there's some force in the
Well, I'll tell you what, the one thing, I'll just close on this because we just hit our hour. I'm in A5044, and there's a dozen nursing homes. And my patients that have been with me forever, they call me up and they need me to come by the nursing home, whatever. When you go into those nursing homes, the implant crowns you did and the implants and overdents you did, they're perfect. And their grandma's sitting out there in the room eating whatever she wants to eat. But those bridges you did, those are mush in 18 months because they don't have dexterity, they got rheumatism, they got Alzheimer's, they got dementia. You have one little $11 an hour certified nurse assistant taking care of 15 people on a wing, and they got to brush their teeth and bathe them and feed them, and they're just the oral health care is going to be like a minute. And I think the luckiest patients I had were the ones I did implants and crowns, not bridges.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because I think that's the most predictable restoration as you go forward. That'll be the most predictive solution and the longest term lasting restoration, because I think, to your point, you're not going to have to deal with all the other stuff. The stuff you can't control won't matter, because as long as the bone stays intact and the implants stay, everything else is going to be in really good shape.
So I'll end with you've done this 15 years, but your boss Bob just celebrated what, 35?
Yeah.
So you think you're going to do it 20 more years, or do you think you're going to go back to gaskets?
I don't think I'm going back to gaskets. That was a tough market. B2B, it was a very tough competitive market, and this is, but not to the same extent. That was a pennies business. Pennies made the difference between one valve purchase and another. This is not quite that. Not yet, anyway.
Well, thank you for an hour of your time.
Thank you.
For inviting me down to Ivoclar, and again, last but not least, if a dentist comes down here with his staff, they can
visit open house, and I would say contact your local rep and talk to them about how you can get access to one of our open house programs.
Yeah, you got to do it, and you're right up the street from Niagara Falls. And the neat thing about Niagara Falls, you can go check into a room where the bed is the shape of a heart and put a quarter in, and it'll start vibrating. So if you haven't slept in a vibrating heart bed, why you see Niagara Falls. But thanks again for your time, and you guys can come down and check it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.